My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and this is 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the simple and yet strategic choices that all of us can make in order to be fully alive. Today in the 3 Words podcast studio is my friend Paul McDonald, a former NFL quarterback, entrepreneur, but more than that, a guide into what it means to answer this question: who am I? We have a very honest and raw conversation about Paul's journey, as well as conversation around identity, focus, purpose, who we are becoming, and what most matters in life. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. Listen in. So Paul McDonald, all the way from Newport Beach, California, here in the 3 Words podcast studio for the first time ever. My friend, for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, married 40 years to a beautiful wife who Allison, 4 amazing children, 5 grandchildren, 6 ones on the way. Blessed life. I had an opportunity to play college football at USC. We had a really good team. We won a national title in 1978. By virtue of that, the term rising tides lift all boats. I became an All-American and got to go to the NFL, played for the Cleveland Browns and the Dallas Cowboys, total of 8 years. So been in the business world, and now we'll probably get into this a bit later. I've got some exciting things that I'm working on as well.
Well, and I'm excited to be able to have a conversation that even moves through kind of your pedigree and so your resume and all that you've become and all that you've accomplished, because we become great friends off the air and through a variety of circumstances, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But before we go too far into this conversation, our 3 words for today you have chosen, and they are,
who am I?
See, I love, this might be the first time that our 3 words are actually a question. And quite honestly, Paul, I think it's one of the most important questions that any of us can ever ask, because I firmly believe that who you are and who we are becoming is at the very foundation of everything that is most important in life. So you and I have become friends over the last couple of years because I've been working actually with your son, Division I college football quarterback. So he's following in your footsteps in many ways, but not just in regards to football. I really believe that Matthew has followed in your footsteps in regards to this conversation, and he has a real sense of who he's becoming. He has a real centering in regards to what is most important in life, and his identity is rock solid. And in many ways, you've made that deposit in his life. So all that to say, I didn't mean to start off with a word of affirmation, but I just am so really pleased to have you in the studio today. But why are these 3 words for you particularly so important?
The term authentic is thrown around all the time in life, and that's sort of the big trendy buzzword about who we want to be. But before we can be authentic, we actually have to know who we are. We have to know ourselves at a very deep level. A particular time in my life, about 12 years ago, actually, 14 years ago, I walked past a mirror and I looked at myself, and I didn't like what was staring back at me. And I realized at the time that, Paul, you're headed down the wrong path. So I stepped back. I went on a personal retreat for several days in the desert and just journaled and took notes and read, watched DVDs, listened to CDs. I guess people don't watch DVDs anymore, but that's how long ago it was. And I just peeled the onion back to answer really deep questions and powerful questions, such as, what are my strengths? I think on the surface, people do this at times. What are my strengths? What are my innate gifts? What do I like to do? But I took it a step further, and this is what I'm suggesting others do. Take it a step further. It's like, what are the underlying motivations? Let's peel that back even further. Like, why do I do what I do? What brings me joy? Why am I here on this planet? And what's my calling? What's my purpose? What gets me out of bed in the morning? Those kinds of things. It's not a job that gets you out of bed. It's got to be deeper than that. And what's deeper than that, it goes to the 4-letter word LOVE. Like, what do I love? And what we all hit speed bumps in the highway, right?
Right.
And things get challenging, and like, do I really want to do this? And most people, when they hit a speed bump, if they're not grounded in who they are at a very deep level, they will change. They'll shift. They'll think, let me go find this. Let me go get a new wife or husband. Let me go change my jobs. Maybe that'll make me happy. So I went through the process over a number of years, a journey of peeling that onion back. And I didn't get a new wife. I didn't change jobs. I stayed in the same role that I was in. What I did is I shifted my perspective internally as far as who I am, what drives me, what motivates me. And that changed everything. There's a quote that goes something like this. I think it's by Otto Rank. What you achieve inwardly will change your outer reality. So, Michael, it all starts with diving inward to discover this stuff about ourselves. And everybody's different. That's the cool thing. I can't tell you, Dr. Michael Brown, you've got to do this. Son Logan, you got to do that. My kids, I can't. This is what you need to do. Everyone's on their own path.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing about life.
I wanted to pause for a moment and check in with you. I hope you are enjoying this conversation as much as I am with Paul McDonald about the topic of identity. I think this will absolutely be an episode that you'll want to share with a friend or close family member. Now back to the episode. When it's interesting where you talk about belief and you talk about becoming a lot, and we'll talk more about this in a few minutes, but that I tend to believe that if you tell someone more often on a regular basis who they are, you don't need to tell them as often what to do, because everything flows out of identity. In fact, I believe, and we've talked about this, that the most important thing about you, the most important thing about me, is what comes into my mind when I think about myself. Now, I think probably those who are listening and viewing us right now and tuned into this podcast episode would probably agree with that theoretically, and yet, unless there is a moment or a wake-up call or a crisis or something, typically we're not going to take that deep dive. For you, when you looked in the mirror, I mean, you were at the height of success.
Yeah.
But you looked in the mirror and said, this isn't good. You hit this point of crisis, or if I can use the term wake-up call, which caused you to...
Better term.
Go into wake-up call?
Yes.
A wake-up call. That's what precipitated this journey for you. So tell us more about that. Why was there this wake-up call? Because you were doing so well. I mean, those who would say, hey, you're in the NFL and you're successful and you've achieved all these things, why would you need a wake-up call?
It's interesting because...
Weren't you happy with the success?
No.
Interesting.
No, I wasn't happy because I was always, I grew up dreaming of playing football. And it wasn't just like I was going to fast forward from youth sports to the NFL. It was like one step at a time. So you got to trust that process. God, I'd love to go play high school football. And I was in high school and I performed well and I wanted to play in college. And then I did that and I got to the NFL. But I just loved it because I was good at it. I loved the position of playing quarterback because it was so demanding, not just from a physical perspective, from an emotional, mental perspective, even spiritual perspective, having faith and belief and all of those things going into a game. It was just incredibly challenging and stimulating for me. And so that's what drove me. So I got to do that. I got to live my dream.
And then it wasn't satisfying?
No, it was. And then it ended. And then it ended, which it does for every athlete. So I've talked to lots of athletes. Everyone goes through the same thing. We've read about them. A lot of them crash and burn, after they're done playing, because they don't have that purpose. They don't have that next thing. You cannot replicate the life of a professional athlete in the real world. It just can't be done. So my first job, I go to this major national bank and I show up and by the way, there are no cheerleaders. The band wasn't playing. And
you're walking in by yourself.
Nobody wanted my autograph. I mean, I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not in Kansas anymore. So I asked the guy, I found it, there wasn't somebody at the reception area. So I asked somebody, I saw some, I go, introduce myself, Paul McDonald. And It's my first day on the job, and where do I go? So, here, come with me. So we walked down the hallway, found an empty desk with a phone. Oh, this will do. That was my introduction to the real world.
Post-success, post-NFL.
Yes. So most athletes, unless you're at the height of all of that, but even those people, I'm talking male, female, everybody, that have made tons of money, have a lot of fame, you're always kind of searching for that again. Trying to replicate that again. Thinking maybe I'll go make a lot of money and that'll do it. I'll go do something on TV and that'll do it. You never get there.
But you would say what does it then is actually being able to answer for yourself the question, who am I?
100%.
I was, we were just chatting about your book. I'm actually going to hold it up here because I have my own copy. I was trying to find it today. And I couldn't think, good thing you brought yours, but book Through the Tunnel, True Stories of Sports and Life That Empower Your Spirit by Paul McDonald. And it's interesting. I was looking at that first section. We were chatting about it on the drive over here, but the very first chapter is split into 3 sections. The chapter's entitled Know Yourself.
That's the part. That's the first part. Yeah.
First conversation. Who am I?
Yes.
Second, personal identity. Thirdly, who do I want to become? I was honored to actually be able to put a little bit of a note on the back of the book. And I meant this sincerely. I'm going to read it to our viewers and listeners because it is that true and that near and dear to my heart. And I said this, that most athletes are preoccupied with championship trophies, but Paul reminds us that what you are believing and who you are becoming is what is most essential. It's interesting, even before I met you and before we became friends, I was talking about this notion that we're not going to one day wake up having become someone we've not been becoming. And so then to meet you and to be like, wait, he's using that same language of becoming and identity and so forth. And I knew we'd become fast friends because I think we've both learned, obviously I'm in my 50s, you're in your 60s, that these trophies, whatever you would call your trophy in life, they just don't satisfy. They don't bring the happiness because they are disconnected from our identity. Agreed?
Yeah, ego based, and ego always wants more, and more, and you're never satisfied.
But I've heard you say then we don't need more because we already have it all.
Yeah, we do. Talk
about that.
Well, we've been blessed. If we have gratitude, if we take life from a gratitude perspective, we have everything we need. We have everything we need, right? And it's those simple things in life that provide true meaning, right? And that's really all we're looking for. We're looking for what is our true meaning, what provides meaning for us in life. And just winning a game or getting a trophy or getting a promotion again and again and again is temporary. And it doesn't bring happiness. That comes from within, right? And that's where we get our enthusiasm. That's where we get our motivation. Enthusiasm comes from the Greek word ethos, which means God within. So the shamans believe the spirit informs the soul informs the mind, and the mind informs the body. So we got to take this at a very much of a deeper level, a very spiritual level. And so we talk about ways to find yourself. I went to the desert. I meditated. I prayed. I took walks. Sometimes like even being on the range and hitting a golf ball can be sort of meditative therapy, because you're only focusing on that one thing in the present moment. You're only focusing on that. You're not
being fully present.
Fully present. Because you don't have a million thoughts in your mind going through and bombarding and all the noise in life that happens. And so this is the thing that people need to do. There's no need in life because that's all about surviving. But if they want to thrive, they should choose to be still, to center themselves to the realities of why we're here and why they're here. And I believe at a global level, we're all here to grow and evolve. We all come into this planet at a certain level, and we're all here to grow and evolve, and the challenges allow us to do that and so forth. But you have to take time to sit, be still, and to discover that. And then the final thing for me that has evolved, and this happens through time, I think everyone's on this chase to find it, and they're young and they want to escape and find themselves and create this own identity of like, I'm the superstar athlete, or I'm the superstar CEO, or I'm the superstar politician, or the artist, or whatever it might be. But that's not the title. Those identities are meaningless, right?
Apart from being in touch with the core of who we are.
Yeah, and for me, it's loving and serving. I mean, that's all that matters, is loving and serving others is all that matters.
Okay, let's stop there for a minute, because this is important. So you went through this journey, you looked in the mirror, you've written this book, you are really now trying to maximize your life. You've really ridden this ride of success. And yet you're at this point in your life now where you're like, actually, my core values and the reason why I exist is to love and to serve.
Exactly.
That doesn't sound like an NFL quarterback.
No, it doesn't.
So that's been, but I'm guessing at the root of all of us, there's probably those deeper values and those deeper sense of identity that sometimes we're just not in touch with, because we are, like you said, chase. I've oftentimes said we shouldn't be chasing happiness, because you'll never find it. That
Correct.
Happiness is a fruit and should never be a pursuit. It is a fruit that comes from living life well, what you said, loving and serving, but also looking in the mirror. I mean, how satisfying it must be for you now to look in the mirror now versus 12, 13, 14 years ago. Obviously, you've aged, but beyond that, right? There's a sense probably, I like who I am and who I'm becoming, and I feel like I understand myself.
There's a fear with people to be still, because they might look under the hood and not like what they see. And there might be pain. There might be issues that they haven't dealt with, but they need to deal with. The thing you most fear, you need to do. I think that's the reason that people do, go. They don't want to slow down enough to have to deal with that, because we all have stuff.
Yeah.
And it's okay. It's okay that we have stuff.
Ooh, I love that you say that it's okay, because today I want all of our listeners and viewers to realize that today it is okay, not only okay, but actually a good thing to be fully human.
How good is that?
It's great.
To be okay with being human. I mean, this is awesome.
Well, and that's what we are, right?
Yes.
And that is who we are.
But we're not taught that that's a cool thing. We're taught that, we got to be perfect. I mean, we got social media, we got Instagram, we got this, we got that. We got to oh my God, look at those people. I'm not like that. The reason we attach ourselves to drama, Dr. Michael Brown, DMB, the reason we attach ourselves to drama, the reason we want drama in our lives, it makes us feel alive, and it also makes us feel better about ourselves, because we see the other stuff going on out there in society, and we go, I guess my life's okay after all.
So if I can rephrase, even summarize what you just said, drama actually is a gift, though it is a dark gift, that it's a gift that allows us to be distracted from what is really happening inside of us. You mentioned being quiet and being still. Just this morning, actually, I was looking at some interesting research on, if you live to be 75 years old and you have a family and you have children, you're married and have children, it was showing how much time will you spend in the presence of a spouse? How much time will you spend in the presence of your parents, of your children? But the one that was most interesting is how much time will you spend alone with yourself? That actually is the most time that you spend on this planet is alone. And it's the very thing from what you just said we're trying to most avoid, because we have to grapple with who we are becoming and that big, deep question of who am I?
Yeah, who am I? But when we're alone, what are we telling ourselves? What are we saying to ourselves? It's probably not great stuff for the most part, for most people. It wasn't for me. I was telling myself, I'm not good enough. You got to try harder. What's wrong with you? Those kinds of things. And I'm sure others in society have those questions rolling around in their mind as well, too.
Well, because their identity's shaky. And again, if your identity has not been formed and you've not actually given attention, because I think it's actually a process where you can actually give attention to developing and strengthening your identity the same way that you could developing your perfect throw or pass. I think that we should give the same of attention to becoming and to growing in our identity as we do to all the other skill sets that we're developing in our lives.
It's practice. It's practice, practice. It's the same thing. That's why whatever method works for you, there's all sorts of things you can do to get in touch, to get centered, to be still, walk on the beach, a walk on the park, riding a bike. Some people like even jogging, but that's kind of too much activity. It's got to be slower, easier. Just sitting and staring at a sunset could be magnificent. It's unbelievable. Take you to another place. And we need to spend more time with that. And because I love to say we're not human doings. We're human beings. We need to be, right? We need to be more of us, more of the time. So, there's a great story that we write about in the book.
Share it.
On Who Am I? Her name is Marta Vieira da Silva, a.k.a. the Queen of Soccer. Okay, she's Brazilian. She grew up in Brazil shortly after they just started allowing girls to play soccer. And she was gifted, and she knew who she wanted to be. But she was ridiculed by friends, family, the community, suggesting to her she should do something different. But she knew who she was. She loved it. She enjoyed it. She was gifted at it. She wanted it. And she ultimately became the iconic soccer player that she has. She's won, I think she has the most goals, 19, I believe, in the World Cup play of any female soccer player that's ever played the game. And it all came from this burning desire within, knowing what she wanted to do, and this was who she was. Mm-hmm. Now, again, that's more doing, but that came from within her. Because how else could you explain it when the whole world was telling you, don't do it. Mm-hmm. And she kept on her path because she knew she was being true to herself.
It's interesting, your epiphany, your awareness, your wake-up call is now actually grown into not only a passion, but a profession. You are building an organization called GameChange, and you have invited me to participate in that, and I'm very actively involved in this really exciting adventure with you. And at the root of it, I think, is some of the things we're talking about today, helping athletes, helping people from all over the world actually understand some of these things. Just as we begin to wrap up this conversation, talk to us a little bit about GameChange and how it ties into this idea of who we're becoming and who am I identity.
This is another quote that I absolutely love. Our greatest work is that which we wish had been offered to us when we were in our deepest pain. Right? So hence, I went through this journey, this self-discovery, rediscovery of Paul, finding Paul. And one thing I want to mention before I forget, I think we do all the things we do in life to numb ourselves, right? And for me, it was with alcohol. And it was a social setting, but it was business related, so I could rationalize it, right? But it was still the same. People do it with drugs. People do it with travel. People do it with going to movies all the time. People do it with whatever. And so we got to be real with ourselves and stop numbing ourselves, right? So we've created this platform to help others, younger people, typically high school kids, the coaches, even the parents indirectly, of course, and everybody, with content and information that's empowering to suggest that everybody can be all that they want to be. They can create the world they want, right? In a world of negativity that's all around us, that's everywhere, that's bombarding us, we're gonna be this beacon of positivity and encouragement for others. And we're really happy and thankful that you're on the journey with us with this, because we're having athletes, male, female, all sports, other sports related people, and the scientists, the the people that are experts in their field, like yourself, we're bringing a whole stable of people together to deliver different messages in different ways. I'm not the guru. I don't have all the answers. You might be the guru.
No way.
I'm not. I know that.
Yeah.
My wife continues to remind me every single day. So, but if we have 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 voices that give different perspective on things to other people, somebody's going to relate to one of those voices. And that's what we're attempting to achieve.
Well, and I love that, Paul, because you're actually not focusing your passions on here's how to become the best athlete, but this is how to become the best human being. And then, of course, athleticism and success and other, benefits come out of that. But at the very root, and you've heard me talk about this, and I know our viewers and listeners have too. I talk about the 4 seasons of a person's life: identity, investigation, influence, and then inspiration. But at the very root of that, the very foundation of that is identity development and knowing who I am. Because all the things you talked about, the things that we were chasing and pursuing and think are most important in life, what's most startling about that is no one's talking about any of those things at the end of their life.
No.
They're talking about relationships. They're talking about what you talked about: serving, loving, people, who I become, the qualities of my life. As I pass from this life to the next, who have I become? Who am I? Are the questions that we're asking. So if those are the ultimate questions we're asking in our final days and hours and moments on this planet, why would we postpone all of those amazing questions of who am I becoming, what is most important in life, to then when we can wrestle with them now, do the work that you described and beautifully here now, so that when we arrive to that point, whenever that day is, we actually can feel good about looking at ourselves in the mirror and smiling and feeling like we've done the most important work. Paul, it was a pleasure being with you here in the studio today. Like we talked about, we could talk for hours on this topic.
Let's keep going.
And there'll be more opportunities, I'm sure, for us to have you back in the studio and as well. You and I have done podcasts with GameChange, and they're all over the internet now. And we're going to have many more opportunities to have these kinds of conversations in a variety of contexts. But it's a pleasure to be your friend, and I appreciate you traveling all the way from California to be in the studio today.
Always a pleasure to be with you wherever we're at. Can't wait for the next one.
Thank you, my friend. For life coaching, consulting services, or to hire a keynote speaker, please visit dmbcoaching.com.